Thank you all for so quietly returning to your seat. So our next graduate student presentation is going to be from Jingyi, and she is going to be giving us a presentation titled "Are Fathers More Vulnerable? Co-parenting Relationships and Parental Involvement in Low-Income Families." She is a fourth-year PhD student in the developmental psychology program, and she works in the Parents and Children Center with Dr. Sarah Colby Sullivan, and her research focuses on studying children's social emotional development in the context of the family. So give her a nice warm welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to share my study with you. It's co-parenting relationship and parental involvement in low-income families with young children. So as you know, parental involvement is essential for children's development. Well, to achieve optimal child outcome, well, parental involvement needs to go beyond fulfilling children's basic physical needs. Involvement in developmentally appropriate and stimulating activities like reading books to children, playing toys with children are very important for children's social emotional development, language development, and cognitive development. And unfortunately, parents in poverty, they are less likely to engage in these activities with their children. Well, parental involvement is shaped by a lot of different factors. And at the family level, co-parenting is a critical factor that we need to consider. Co-parenting refers to how parents work together to take care of their children, how they coordinate their parenting responsibilities and work. Well, a supportive co-parenting relationship, a positive co-parenting relationship is characterized by mutual encouragement, mutual endorsement, acknowledgement, trust in child rearing related work. And previous studies have found that a supportive co-parenting relationship is associated with more positive parenting behaviors in both mothers and fathers, and it's also related to higher father involvement. However, co-parenting may not have equal impact on fathers and mothers. Studies focused on maternal discord found that male functioning marital relationship had a stronger adverse effect on fathers' parenting behaviors than mothers' parenting behaviors, and which is known as the father vulnerability hypothesis. And here we want to extend the examination of father vulnerability hypothesis to the co-parenting context. And given that most studies were done in the white and affluent families, and we also want to test this hypothesis in diverse low-income families. And given the mixed findings in the existing literature, we want to identify factors that may shape parents' susceptibility to co-parenting relationships. So here we focus on three moderators. First, tri-gender. Well, typically mothers' involvement don't differ based on tri-gender, and there are inconsistent findings in terms of fathers' involvement. Well, some studies show that fathers of boys, they are more involved in parenting than fathers of girls. And in terms of race, a few studies show that African American fathers and Latino fathers, they are more involved in parenting than white fathers. And in terms of fathers' residential status, as you can imagine, non-resident fathers are less involved. And it seems that co-parenting also had a stronger impact on non-resident fathers' involvement. And so the purpose of the current study is to explore the associations between co-parenting and the parental involvement in play in low-income families. And we want to know whether fathers are more affected by co-parenting relationship than mothers. And we want to know whether tri-gender race and fathers' residential status shape these changes, shape these associations. So we use data from the Building Strong Families project. It's a multi-site relationship skill education program for unmarried low-income adult couples. And we mainly use data from the two follow-up studies. So the first follow-up study was 15 months after the enrollment, and the second was when children were around 3 years old. And our total sample size was 4,606 families, and our sample size changed in moderation analysis. So as for measures, mothers and fathers independently report their perceptions about their co-parenting relationship quality, as well as their involvement in social and cognitive play at both time 1 and time 2. and we use cross-select panel models to analyze our data. So we are mostly interested in the cross-select path from co-parenting at T1 to involvement at T2. And we included both actor effect and partner effects. Well, however, we didn't find we found fewer significant partner effects, and also partner effects never differed for mothers and fathers. So the results I'm going to present mainly focus on actor effects, which means one's own perceptions of a co-parenting relationship at T1 to one's own involvement at T2. So we found that overall, co-parenting relationship quality had a stronger impact on fathers' involvement than mothers' involvement. But not all fathers are equally susceptible to the impact of co-parenting relationships. It seems that fathers of girls, their involvement are more affected by co-parenting relationship quality than fathers of boys. And also, African American fathers, their involvement are more affected by co-parenting relationship than white fathers. And for non-resident fathers, their involvement are more affected by co-parenting relationship than resident fathers. So we didn't find extensive associations between co-parenting and the mother's involvement. Well, it may be due to that our social norms still expect mothers to be highly involved, and intensive mothering norms are prevalent not only in affluent families, but also in low-income families. And we did find that positive co-parenting relationship can encourage fathers to get involved in parenting their children. However, it's not about vulnerability, which we start with. Here we found that co-parenting affects fathers' involvement in for better and for worse approach. So it's more like susceptibility. They are more susceptible to the effects. And not all fathers are equally affected. So we found that fathers of girls, they are more affected by co-parenting relationship than boys. It may be because in early childhood, fathers may feel more comfortable and more confident in taking care and playing with their boys than girls. And in terms of race, well, African American fathers, they may attach greater values and greater importance to family relationship than white fathers. So as a result, they may be more affected by co-parenting relationship quality. And in terms of fathers' residential status, typically we have less expectations and requirements for non-resident fathers, and they may need more encouragement, more support from mothers to get engaged with their children. And also co-parenting, a supportive co-parenting relationship may be key for non-resident fathers to stay in touch with their children and maintain contact with their children. However, these are future studies could further explore these mechanisms, underlying mechanisms, and explore other characteristics like a personal characteristic, relationship characteristic, and children's characteristic that may contribute to parents' susceptibility to family relationships. As for implications, well, we suggest that based on the current study, we suggest that intervention programs targeting family relationships and parenting intervention programs, they could consider to work on parents' co-parenting relationship to help them build a mutual supportive co-parenting relationship. And given that currently family strengthening programs, the participants in family strengthening programs and the parent intervention programs are mostly mothers. So these programs could spend more efforts in involve fathers in these programs, and they could also consider targeting populations with heightened level of susceptibility, so they are more likely to benefit from improved family relationships. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
question. So in your cross-section model, it sort of assumes like a data normal left, right?
Yes.
But then your data collection was a cross-sectional?
No, it's not
Okay.
cross-sectional. We collected both.
Okay, then
Yes.
can do.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we didn't show all the effects because the tables were very long, so I only take a snapshot.
Mentioned that maybe interventions would be something that might help with some of the less involved co-parenting or parenting. What kinds of interventions might think about it?
That's a good question. So, based on our current study, it seems that a more supportive co-parenting relationship, like help parents to acknowledge or identify the strengths of their partners or their children's other parents' strengths in parenting, help them to facilitate each other's involvement and help them to show more encouragement to each other instead of undermining behaviors. So that may help them to build a more supportive co-parenting relationship, and which may also help them to build to stay engaged with their children and potentially be show high quality parenting behaviors as well.
I'm looking at some of your sample items from the parental involvement.
Yep.
And wondering whether you think there's a concern about differences in the way that scale might operate between your lower income and higher income families in terms of things like access to books and games, and like, does the same score mean the same thing in low income versus high income families, do you think?
That's a great question. Well, here my sample were mostly, the majority of them were low income families, and in this study we didn't collect data from more wealthy families or affluent families. Yes, it's possible that it's possible that these parents may have different access to resources, and they may show, that's maybe the reason that they show different levels of involvement in this kind of developmentally appropriate or stimulating activities. Yes. Yes, I think that's something we could consider. Like instead, besides working on the relationship, we could also working on provide direct help and direct support for those parents to help them to engage with their children.
I wonder about like thinking about what does it look like to engage in social and cognitive play in a context where you have fewer resources. Like, okay, well, we don't have a lot of like toys and games, but can we like, so maybe things like singing songs, telling stories, like getting your child involved with helping with cooking or household chores. And like I think about like demands on single parents, like you can make a game out of folding laundry, like, and that's probably just as good for them as like sitting down and playing with toys in some ways.
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, actually, I think there are studies on different patterns of parental involvement in families, and but I can't think of on top of my head whether income could predict these different patterns. But I think that's definitely a possibility that different families or affluent families or low-income families may show very different patterns in terms of parental involvement.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.